There is something that happens to time in a firefight. Not the way people describe it in movies. Not the slow motion. Not the hyper-awareness of every detail. It is something more specific than that, and harder to explain to someone who has not been in one. Time becomes unreliable. Not fast. Not slow. Unreliable in the way that a compass becomes unreliable near a magnetic anomaly, pointing somewhere, but not necessarily north. You think 3 minutes have passed. It has been 11. You think you have been firing for 30 seconds. You fired your first magazine and have almost finished your second, and that does not happen in 30 seconds. Travis Cole knew this about time. He had been in enough firefights to know it, and to compensate for it, to deliberately count things instead of tracking time. Rounds, contacts, changes in the threat geometry, things that could be counted, and that would tell him more reliably where in the situation he was than the number of minutes his brain was claiming had elapsed. At 01:57 hours, on the 17th of October in Nangarhar Province, Afghanistan, Travis Cole was counting. He had counted 4 contacts, in what his brain was telling him was about 20 minutes, but what the magazine count was telling him was closer to 40. He had counted 6 threat positions, 5 of which were suppressed, 1 of which was still active on the northern ridge. He had counted 1 Belgian Malinois named Bolt, who was pressed against his right side in the cover behind the eastern wall of a compound that had been the team's objective 47 minutes ago. And that was now the only structure between Travis and the northern ridge position. And he had counted 0 other operators. Not because they were gone, because they were not there. The team had been separated in the initial contact. Walsh and 3 others had gone south toward the extraction point. Travis and Bolt had gone east to suppress the northern ridge position and had found that the northern ridge position was more committed than the intelligence had suggested, and that east was now a position rather than a direction. 6 contacts, 1 position still active, 1 operator, 1 dog. The valley stretched between them and the extraction point. Travis looked at Bolt. Bolt was counting the northern ridge, not literally, but in the way that Bolt counted things, with the specific focused attention of a dog that is tracking a developing situation and keeping an internal record of everything in it that matters. Travis said, "Okay." Bolt's ears moved. Travis said, "What have you got?" This is their story, and it starts the way all the stories that matter start. Not at the beginning. At the moment when the beginning becomes relevant. Stay with me. Before this story goes any further, if you are new here, subscribe to Cool Drama Stories right now. Hit the bell. Turn on notifications. Because every day we bring you a story exactly like this one. A story that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Subscribe now, and stay with me, because this story is just beginning. Travis Cole grew up in a small city called Midland, Texas. If you have not been to Midland, you need to understand something about it before this story makes full sense. Midland sits in the Permian Basin, which is a geological formation that covers a significant portion of West Texas and southeastern New Mexico, and that is about as flat as the earth gets outside of a parking lot. The horizon in every direction is unobstructed by anything except the sky, which is enormous, and the occasional pump jack, which is everywhere. Pump jacks are the machines that pull oil from the ground. They move in a slow, rhythmic nodding motion that becomes invisible after you have lived around them long enough. Like the breath of the landscape. Like the landscape is doing something it has always been doing, and will always do regardless of who is watching. Travis grew up watching them. His father worked in the oil industry. Not drilling. Not extraction. The less glamorous and more essential work of pipeline maintenance. Keeping the infrastructure that moved the oil from the wells to the refineries operational. The work that most people never thought about because it worked. And when it worked, you did not notice it. And when it did not work, you noticed everything else, all at once. He was on call 7 days a week. Not officially. In practice. Because a pipeline does not fail on a schedule. And because his father was the kind of person who could not turn off the part of himself that was responsible for the pipeline, even when he was not officially responsible for it. He answered the phone on Christmas morning. Twice in the 11 years that Travis was old enough to remember Christmas mornings. Both times there was a problem. Both times he went. Both times he came back in the afternoon, and did not talk about it much because the problem had been solved, and solved problems did not require talking about. Travis absorbed this, The problem requires what it requires. You provide what it requires. You did not talk about it much. His mother was a high school math teacher. 21 years at Midland High School teaching algebra and geometry and calculus to teenagers who were mostly interested in other things and who needed someone who could make the abstract concrete and the concrete interesting. She was exceptional at both. She had a particular skill that Travis watched her deploy at every dinner table conversation that involved a problem of any kind. She would take the problem and reduce it. Not simplify it. Reduce it. Strip away everything that was not essential until what remained was the core of the problem and the core of the solution. She called it finding the shape. She said every problem has a shape. Most people cannot see the shape because they are looking at everything around it. The shape is what you are trying to get to, everything else is context. Travis grew up finding the shape. He found it in the firefight, he found it every time. He enlisted at 20. 1 year of Texas Tech had confirmed what the Permian Basin had been telling him since he was old enough to watch the pump jacks. He was built for the sustained work, the work that does not have dramatic moments, the work that is a continuous, low-level commitment to keeping things operational, to maintaining the infrastructure that allows everything else to function, to answering the phone on Christmas morning because the problem requires what it requires.
He passed buds on his first attempt. His class started with 91 candidates. 12 finished. Travis was one of them. His Hell Week instructor, a senior chief named Garrett, who had run 23 buds classes in 12 years, wrote this in his evaluation. Cole is the most problem reduction-focused candidate I have assessed in 12 years. He does not solve problems, he finds their shape. He strips them down to the essential question, and then answers the essential question, and treats everything that is not the essential question as noise to be managed, rather than substance to be engaged. This sounds cold, it is not. It is the most efficient form of intelligence I have observed in this context. He does not have a big personality. He does not inspire through presence, the way some candidates do. He inspires through outcomes. People follow him, because when they follow him, things work out. That is the most durable form of leadership I know. Recommend without reservation. He deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, Iraq in 2012, Afghanistan again in 2014, Syria in 2016, and Nangarhar Province, Afghanistan in 2018 for his 5th deployment. 5 deployments, 12 years. His teammates described him in a way that required more words than usual because the word they were looking for did not exist quite right. They said, he finds the shape of the problem. Walsh said, Travis Cole is the person I want when the situation has become complicated in ways that complicate everything around them. Not when it is simply hard, when it has become complicated. When there are so many variables that most people cannot identify which ones matter, Cole identifies the ones that matter. He does this faster than anyone I have served with, and with a higher accuracy rate. He finds the shape of the problem. He answers the shape. Everything else he manages as context. I cannot explain how he does this. I can tell you that when he does it, people come home, who would not otherwise come home. Bolt came into Travis's life in the winter of 2016. He was a Belgian Malinois. 69 pounds. Dark fawn with a black mask. Compact. Dense. With a quality of energy that was the first thing everyone noticed, and that most people described as intensity, but that was more specific than that. It was focus. Not the broad focus of a dog that is attentive to everything. The specific focus of a dog that has identified the thing that matters in any given situation, and is giving that thing its complete undivided attention, while managing everything else as peripheral information. Bolt did not get distracted. Not because he did not notice the things that distracted other dogs. He noticed them. He assessed them. He determined whether they were the shape of the problem, or the context around the shape of the problem. If they were context, he managed them peripherally and returned his focus to the shape. If they were the shape, he gave them everything. The kennel master at the Nangarhar facility was a woman named Rodriguez, who had been matching handler pairs for 18 years, and who had seen enough exceptional dogs to know the difference between exceptional and the thing beyond exceptional that occasionally showed up, and that required a different kind of handler than exceptional required. She told Travis this before she showed him Bolt's file. She said, Bolt is not for everyone.
In fact, he is for almost nobody.
3 handlers before you. All good operators, all capable handlers. None of them lasted more than 2 months with Bolt before requesting a transfer. Travis said. Why? Rodriguez said. Because Bolt does not work the way most dogs work. Most dogs follow the handler's lead. They take their direction from the handler and execute on that direction. Bolt does not follow the handler's lead. He partners with it. He has his own read of the situation, and he brings that read to the partnership, and he expects the handler to engage with his read the way you would engage with a partner's read, not to override it or ignore it, to factor it in, she said. The handlers who left found that exhausting. They wanted a dog that did what they said. Bolt does what the situation says after consulting with the handler about what the situation says. Travis said, that sounds like how most good partnerships work. Rodriguez looked at him for a moment, then said, read his file. The notation read. Bolt demonstrates a collaborative intelligence profile that is unprecedented in our assessment history. He does not work for his handler. He works with his handler. The distinction is significant in practice. In scenarios where the handler's assessment of the situation and Bolt's assessment diverge, Bolt does not defer to the handler. He advocates for his assessment through persistent behavioral signals that continue until the handler either adopts his assessment or provides compelling counter-evidence that Bolt then incorporates. In 14 separate assessment scenarios where Bolt's assessment diverged from the handler's, Bolt was subsequently judged to be correct in 11. The handler was correct in 3. In all 14 scenarios, the correct assessment was ultimately adopted by the pair. In the 11 where Bolt was correct, this happened because Bolt persisted until the handler engaged with his read. In the 3 where the handler was correct, this happened because Bolt incorporated the handler's counter-evidence and updated his own assessment accordingly. Bolt is not a dog who will override a handler's decision. He is a dog who will not let a handler make a decision without engaging with Bolt's assessment of the situation first. Handler note. Bolt requires a handler who treats his assessments as data rather than as noise. The right handler is not the one who agrees with Bolt. The right handler is the one who engages with him. Travis read the notation. Read the last paragraph again. The right handler is the one who engages with him. He said to Rodriguez. He finds the shape of the problem, and he does not let you ignore it. Rodriguez said, that is accurate. Travis said, and the handlers who left did not want to engage with a dog's read of the situation. Rodriguez said, they wanted a tool. Bolt is not a tool. Travis said, take me to him. Bolt was in the training yard, running a scenario, but the thing that Travis noticed immediately was that Bolt was not running it the way the scenario was designed to be run. He was running it the way the scenario should have been designed. He had found the shape. The scenario had been set up with 3 threat positions and a specified approach route and an objective at the far end of the yard. The design solution involved clearing the approach and moving to the objective. Bolt had identified that the approach route ran between 2 of the 3 threat positions in a way that would have exposed him to both simultaneously, and that the 3rd threat position was actually positioned to cover the approach route's exit rather than its entrance. The shape of the problem was not the 3 positions. The shape was the geometry between them and the approach route. Bolt was not running the approach route. He was running the counter to the geometry. Travis watched him work for 3 minutes, then walked into the training yard. Bolt registered his presence, did not stop working, finished the scenario, then turned and looked at Travis. The look of a dog that has completed something and is now assessing what comes next. Travis said, the 3rd position covers the exit, not the entrance. Bolt's ears went forward. Travis said, you ran the south perimeter to avoid the exit coverage and cleared the 2 flank positions before you moved on the objective. Bolt walked to him. Not the working position, not sitting in front of him. He walked to Travis's left side and turned to face the training yard. Both of them looking at the scenario Bolt had just run. Rodriguez, watching from the gate, said, later, that was the fastest Bolt had ever accepted a handler. She said, he walked to your left side. Travis said, he wanted to show me what he had done. Rodriguez said, he wanted to show you what he saw. Travis said, same thing. Over the following 15 months, Travis and Bolt became what nobody in the unit had a name for,
Because the thing they were required a conversation rather than a label. They read problems together. Travis found the shape, Bolt found the shape. They compared shapes. When the shapes matched, they moved. When they diverged, they engaged until one of them updated their read. 11 out of 14 times Bolt was right. 3 times Travis was right. Every time the correct read was adopted before they moved. In 9 operations, Bolt detected 4 IED placements, tracked 3 high-value targets, identified 2 threat geometries that the team's briefing had not captured, and once in a scenario that the after-action report described as a multiple simultaneous threat event identified the shape of the problem in 4 seconds and communicated it to Travis in a way that Travis subsequently described as the most efficient briefing he had ever received. 4 seconds. Complete situational read. Communicated through the specific behavioral signals that Bolt used when he had found the shape and needed Travis to engage with it. Travis engaged. The team came home. His teammates called Bolt one word: partner. Not in the casual sense, in the operational sense. Because Bolt was not a K9 asset. He was a partner, equal in the relevant respects, contributing what he contributed and receiving what he received in return. At night, Bolt slept facing Travis, not pressed against him, not at his feet, not guarding the door, facing him, as if even in sleep he was engaged with the partnership, available for the conversation, ready to show Travis what he saw. Travis never moved him. He understood. He wrote to his mother once from Bagram. There is a dog here named Bolt. He finds the shape of the problem the same way you taught me to find it. He strips away the context and gets to the essential question, and then he does not let you ignore the essential question once he has found it. He is right 11 times out of 14. I am right 3 times out of 14. Between us, we are right every time. I did not think there was such a thing as a partner who made me better by disagreeing with me. I was wrong. Bolt makes me better by engaging with me, by treating my read as data, and his read as data, and the conversation between the two as the way to the correct answer. You taught me that every problem has a shape. Bolt taught me that finding the shape is better when there are 2 of you looking. His mother wrote back, bring him home. I want to see how he finds the shapes in my algebra problems. Operation Iron Dawn came in October. 17th of October, 2018. Outside temperature at insertion, 11 degrees Celsius. Cloud cover, 70%. Wind variable. The particular instability of an October night in Nangarhar province that makes weather planning an exercise in managing uncertainty rather than eliminating it. The objective. A command node operating out of a compound 14 kilometers northeast of Jalalabad in the Nangarhar Valley, high value, time sensitive. The compound was being used to coordinate 3 active networks. Taking it offline would create a disruption in operational capacity across the province that intelligence estimated at 6 to 8 weeks. The approach was through the valley floor, open, long, the kind of approach that required moving quickly and quietly, and that offered limited cover if the situation changed. Bolt read the briefing map for 4 minutes, not 4 seconds, 4 minutes. Travis had learned to give in the time. Because when Bolt spent 4 minutes on a briefing map, it meant Bolt was finding something that was not obvious from the map alone, something in the relationship between the elements, something that required looking at the full geometry of the situation before it became visible. After 4 minutes, Bolt looked at Travis. His ears were slightly back. Not flat, slightly. Travis said, "What do you see?" Bolt looked at the map. Travis looked at where Bolt was looking. The valley floor approach, the compound at the end of it, and the ridgelines on both sides of the valley that the briefing had described as clear. Travis looked at the eastern ridgeline, then the western, then the relationship between the 2 ridgelines and the valley floor and the compound. He found the shape. The compound was not positioned to defend itself, it was positioned to see the approach to itself. The ridgelines were the defense, not active positions. Observation positions. The compound knew when people were coming because the ridgelines told it. The valley floor approach did not have a surprise component. They would be seen. Travis keyed his radio. Walsh, the valley approach is observed. Both ridgelines. They know we are coming before we arrive. Walsh said, intelligence says the ridgelines are clear. Travis said, intelligence is reading the ridgelines as positions. They are not positions. They are eyes. They do not need personnel.
They need line of sight. The compound has line of sight from both ridgelines to the valley floor for the entire approach. Walsh said, alternate approach. Travis said, give me 2 minutes.
He looked at Bolt. Bolt was looking at the briefing map, still finding. Travis looked at the map, found it. The irrigation system that ran along the western edge of the valley, below the ridgeline, below the line of sight from the observation positions. Not a path. A feature of the terrain that created a corridor below the observation angle. He said, western irrigation, below ridgeline, approach from the southwest. We lose the time advantage, but we keep the surprise. Walsh said, confirm with Bolt. Travis looked at Bolt. Bolt's ears had returned to forward. He was looking at the western edge of the map. Travis said, he confirms. Walsh said, go. They inserted at 2100 hours. The western irrigation approach was exactly what Travis and Bolt had read it as. A corridor below the observation angle. Difficult terrain. Slow going. But invisible from the ridgelines above. They reached the compound perimeter at 2330 hours. The breach was clean. The objective was achieved in 7 minutes. The command node was confirmed, documented, rendered inoperable. And then the thing that the briefing had not covered happened. The thing that briefings sometimes do not cover. Because the situation had more shape than anyone had found in the planning. The contact came from 3 directions. Not 1, not 2, 3, northeast, southeast, and from the compound itself. An additional element that had not been in the intelligence. A reserve element positioned inside the compound, specifically for the situation where the compound was breached. Walsh's voice on the radio. Move south. Extract south. I have the northeast covered. The team moves south.
Travis and Bolt went east to suppress the northeast contact that was threatening the southern extraction route. Standard. Logical. The shape of the problem as it appeared in the first 4 seconds. The problem had a different shape. The southeastern contact was not a flanking position, it was a closing position. It was positioned not to prevent the team from escaping south but to prevent anyone who had gone east from coming back west to join the southern extraction. Travis and Bolt had gone east. The southeastern contact closed behind them. Travis keyed his radio. Walsh, I have a closing position southeast. East is now a position. Walsh said, can you break through south? Travis assessed, the southeastern contact was between him and the southern extraction route. The northeastern contact was still active. The compound element was engaging the team's southern movement. He said, negative. Walsh said, I need to move south with the team, I cannot hold. Travis said, go. We will find an alternate. Walsh said, Travis. Travis said, go. Take the team south, we will find an alternate. A pause. Then, copy. Alternate extraction, 1 kilometer northwest, building with red roof, be there at 0400. I will have a pickup, Travis said, copy. Then Walsh's transmission ended and Travis was east of a compound in Nangarhar province with 1 Belgian Malinois and a southeastern contact that had closed behind him and a northeastern contact that was still active on the ridgeline and 1 kilometer of valley between him and a building with a red roof and 0400 hours as the deadline. He looked at Bolt. Bolt was counting. Not the contacts.
The situation that contained the contacts. Travis said, what have you got? Here is what Bolt had. 2 active contacts, northeast and southeast, both elevated relative to the valley floor, both covering the direct routes to the northwest extraction point, both aware that something was in the valley and looking for it. The valley floor was not viable, the ridgeline routes were not viable. The irrigation system that had been the approach was now behind the southeastern contact. Travis looked at what was available. He found the shape. The contacts were elevated. Elevated positions have a specific disadvantage that most people do not consider until they need to. They have limited angles of depression. The closer you are to the base of an elevated position, the harder it is for that position to engage you because the angle of depression required becomes steeper and the ability of the position to track you decreases. The shape of the problem was not how to avoid the contacts. The shape was how to move under them. Travis said to Bolt, we go close.
Bolt looked at him. Travis said, not around them, under them. Close to the base, inside their depression angle. Bolt held his gaze for 2 seconds, then looked at the northeastern ridgeline, then the southeastern, then looked at Travis. His ears were forward. Travis said, you read it the same way. Bolt turned northwest, the direction they needed to go. Travis said, okay. Close to the base, you lead. What followed was 1 hour and 43 minutes of movement through Nangarhar Valley terrain that Travis Cole has described once in a closed debrief and has not described publicly since. He has said this. The contacts were looking for us. We were inside their effective engagement angle for most of the movement, not inside their inability to engage. Inside the angle, where engaging us required them to adjust their position significantly, and where that adjustment would have been visible and audible, and would have told us exactly where they were. They did not adjust, because to adjust is to announce, and to announce is to become a position instead of an observation. And the contacts did not want to become positions, they wanted to remain unseen. Bolt understood this. He understood that the contacts' desire to remain unseen was the thing that protected them, as long as they stayed inside the angle. He moved through the valley the way a question moves through a conversation that nobody wants to answer directly. Close enough to make answering expensive, far enough to maintain the option of not being there. Travis followed Bolt, completely, for 1 hour and 43 minutes. Not because he had abdicated the partnership, because Bolt had found the shape of the problem and was executing against it, and the shape was correct, and Travis knew it was correct, and the correct response to a correct read by a partner is trust. Complete trust. They reached the building with the red roof at 0340, 7 hours, 13 minutes early. Walsh arrived at 0400 with the extraction team and found Travis and Bolt sitting with their backs against the western wall of the building. Travis looked like a man who had been moving carefully through difficult terrain for 1 hour and 43 minutes. Bolt looked like a dog who had just finished a training run. Walsh looked at them, said, how? Travis said,
Bolt found the shape. Walsh said, what shape? Travis said, we went close instead of around. Inside their depression angle. They did not engage because engaging would have told us where they were. Walsh looked at Bolt. Bolt was looking at the building, reading it, still finding. Walsh said, he figured that out. Travis said, we figured it out together. He found it first. Walsh said, in how long? Travis thought about it. Said, about 6 seconds after I asked him what he had. Walsh was quiet for a moment. Then he said, 6 seconds. Travis said, he is faster than me. Walsh said, most of the time. Travis said, 11 out of 14. Walsh looked at Bolt. Said, what is he reading now? Travis looked at Bolt. Bolt was still reading the building. Travis said, the building. He always reads the new ground before he does anything else. Walsh said, old habit. Travis said, not a habit, a method. Walsh nodded. He said, I am glad you made it. Travis said, we found the shape. Walsh said, yeah, you did. If this story is moving you, and I believe it is, take 5 seconds right now. Hit the like button, subscribe to Cool Drama Stories if you haven't already. Every like tells YouTube that this story deserves to be heard by more people. And there are more people who need to hear it. Hit like right now. And let's keep going. Because the best part of this story is still ahead. 3 weeks after the operation, Travis was in the debriefing room at Bagram. The standard after-action debrief. Questions about the approach, the breach, the contact, the alternate extraction. All of it documented in the clinical language of after-action reports that does the work of making operational events comprehensible to people who were not there. The debrief officer asked, how did you identify the alternate route through the valley? Travis said, Bolt found it. The debrief officer said, elaborate. Travis said, Bolt read the situation and identified that the contacts were elevated and that elevated positions have depression angle limitations. He found a route that kept us inside the depression angles of both contacts. I confirmed his read. We executed on it. The debrief officer said, how did he communicate this to you? Travis said, he looked at the northeastern ridgeline, then the southeastern, then at me. His ears were forward, his body was oriented northwest, the direction of the route. The debrief officer said, and you interpreted this as the route recommendation. Travis said,
I interpreted it as his read of the shape of the problem. I found the same shape when I looked at what he was showing me. We agreed on the shape. We moved. The debrief officer said, "How long did this take?" Travis said, "About 6 seconds." The debrief officer wrote something, then looked up. Said, "The after-action report is going to describe this as the handler identifying an alternate route based on situational assessment." Travis said, "That is accurate." The debrief officer said, "It is not going to mention that the dog found it first." Travis looked at him. Said, "It should." The debrief officer said, "The report format does not have a category for K9 independent route finding." Travis said, "Maybe it should have one." The debrief officer looked at his notes. Said, "Maybe it should."
He looked at Travis. Said, "For what it's worth, off the record, in my 4 years of conducting after-action debriefs, I have never heard an operator describe a 6-second nonverbal tactical consultation with a dog that resulted in a successful alternate extraction from a compromised position." Travis said, "Was it in the report format?" The debrief officer smiled. Said, "Not yet." Travis completed the remaining 6 weeks of his 5th deployment, filed his separation papers on the last day. 12 years, 5 deployments, complete. Filed. Bolt's adoption papers at the same time. Rodriguez signed the transfer. Looked at Travis. Said, "He found the route." Travis said, "We found it together." Rodriguez said, "He found it first." Travis said, "Yeah." Rodriguez looked at Bolt. Bolt was reading the door of the kennel master's office. Rodriguez said, "Does he always read new ground before he does anything else?" Travis said, "Always." Rodriguez said, "Even when the ground is a door?" Travis said, "Especially then. You learn more about a room from the door than from the room." Rodriguez looked at Bolt. Said, "He taught you that?" Travis said, "He showed me that. I taught myself." Rodriguez nodded. She said, "The right handler is the one who engages with him." Travis said, "Yeah." She said, "You engaged." Travis said, "He is hard to ignore." She said, 11 out of 14. Travis said, "Every time." Travis flew home to Midland, Texas in November. His mother was at the airport. She looked at Bolt when Travis set the carrier down and opened the door. Bolt walked out, stood, read the terminal. Not quickly.
With the deliberate thoroughness of a dog that does not rush assessments because rushed assessments produce incomplete information. 40 seconds. Then turned to Travis's mother. Assessed her for 5 seconds. Then walked to her, and sat in front of her, and looked up. The way he looked at Travis when he had found the shape and was waiting for Travis to engage with it. His mother looked at him, then looked at Travis. Said, "He is showing me something." Travis said, "He always is." She looked at Bolt. Said, "What is it?" Travis said, "I think he wants to know if you find the shape." She looked at Bolt. Bolt looked at her. She said, "What shape?" She said it to Bolt, not to Travis. Bolt's ears moved forward. She said, "All right, show me." Travis watched his mother have a conversation with a Belgian Malinois in the arrivals terminal at Midland International Airport at 4 in the afternoon in November. He could not hear most of it. He did not need to. He could see Bolt's ears. Forward. Engaged. The specific ear position that meant Bolt had found something and was checking whether the person he was showing it to was seeing it. He could see his mother's eyes. The specific expression she used when she was finding the shape. The slight narrowing. The quality of focus that appeared when everything that was not the essential question had been stripped away, and what remained was the essential question and the path to its answer. She nodded once. Said something. Bolt's ears went to maximum forward. She said it again. Bolt pressed his head against her hand. Just once. Briefly. The confirmation. She straightened up. Looked at Travis. Said, "He was showing me the pump jack outside the window." Travis looked. There was a pump jack visible through the arrivals terminal windows, in the distance, moving in the slow rhythmic nod that he had watched his whole life. He said, "What about it?" She said, "The rhythm is off. The motor is running slightly faster than normal. Something in the mechanism is either wearing or misaligned. I would call the maintenance crew before it fails."
Travis looked at the pump jack, looked at Bolt. Bolt was looking at the pump jack. Travis said, "He read that from inside the terminal." She said, "He read it from across the terminal. Before we reached the window." Travis said, "How?" She said, "The same way you read a problem. You find the shape. The shape of that pump jack is slightly wrong. He found it before either of us did." Travis looked at Bolt. Bolt looked at the pump jack, still reading, still finding, still engaged with the shape of the thing. Travis said, 11 out of 14. His mother said, "What?" Travis said, "He finds the shape 11 times out of 14. I find it 3 times. Together we find it every time." His mother looked at Bolt, then at Travis. Said, "That is what good partnership looks like." Travis said, "Yeah." She said, "Where did you find him?" Travis said, "He found me." Today Travis Cole lives in Midland, Texas, 3 blocks from where he grew up, 2 blocks from where the pump jacks are visible from the kitchen window in the early morning light. He works in pipeline infrastructure, the same work his father did, the sustained maintenance of the systems that keep things moving. The work that nobody notices when it works and that everyone notices when it does not. He finds the shapes in it, every day.
With the particular efficiency of someone who learned it from a woman who taught algebra for 21 years, and from a Belgian Malinois who found it faster than he did 11 times out of 14. Bolt works with him. In the field assessments. In the walkthroughs of new pipeline sections. In the problem-solving sessions where the infrastructure is doing something it should not be doing, and the reason is not obvious from the standard diagnostics. Bolt reads the shape. Travis engages with what Bolt reads. Together they find the answer that neither could find alone. His mother visits twice a year. Every time she comes, she and Bolt spend time together. She shows him algebra problems on her tablet. He reads them. She says, "What do you see?" He shows her what he sees. She works out whether he has found the shape. Travis has watched this happen enough times that he has stopped trying to count how often Bolt is right. He said once, "He is right more than 11 out of 14 with math." His mother said, "He does not find the numbers. He finds the relationship between the numbers." That is what algebra is. Not the numbers. The relationship. Travis said, "The shape." She said, "The shape." Travis looked at Bolt. Bolt was reading his mother's tablet. Still finding. Still engaging. Still bringing his read to the partnership and waiting for the partnership to engage with it. Some bonds are not made in training. They are not made in the briefing room or the kennel or the debrief, where the report format does not have a category for what happened. They are made in the moment, when a dog runs a training scenario the wrong way, and the wrong way turns out to be the right way, and the person watching understands immediately that the dog has found the shape that the scenario was trying to hide, and walks into the training yard, and says it out loud. The third position covers the exit, not the entrance, and the dog's ears go forward, and both of them turn to face the same ground, because they are looking at the same thing. And the thing they are looking at is the shape of the problem, and the shape of the problem is the whole of the answer. Travis Cole and Bolt found the shape of a valley in Nangarhar province in 6 seconds of nonverbal consultation at 01:57 hours. The shape was not around the contacts. The shape was under them. They found it together and came home, because the right handler engages with the dog's read, and the right dog finds the shape before the handler does. And together they are right every time. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Cool Drama Stories right now if you haven't already. Hit the bell. Turn on every notification. Because tomorrow, we have another story that is going to hit you just as hard as this one. Maybe harder. This is Cool Drama Stories, and we are just getting started. Subscribe now. The next story is already waiting.